I hate repeating myself. I don't think Lizzie watched the first video. Very, very, very simply, and it's in here. We're going to get to this. The Seventh-day Adventists believe, and I'm going to make a note here. They agree with what I'm going to say in that book. They totally agree with what I have to say here on what justified means. This book is copyrighted in 1988, which is very significant. Very significant. Why? Because you had Desmond Ford wreaking havoc in the church. You had Robert Grimsmead wreaking havoc in the church. You had Walter Ray wreaking havoc in the church about Ellen White, but especially Desmond Ford with the investigative judgment and bringing the gospel, rediscovering the Reformation, the gospel, the biblical gospel. And so they knew they had to come out with some sort of, it's not even it's a small systematic, but they knew they had to come out with something. And the same thing happened in the 50s, questions on doctrine. They were getting a lot of heat from Barnhouse. They were getting a lot of heat, and Walter Martin took over after him. And they took a lot of heat from Martin and Barnhouse, and so they wanted to look more, quote-unquote, evangelical. And so they came out with questions and doctrines, and they pretty much agreed with the Reformation. But in practice, in their inner circles, as I know, I'm a former Adventist. I was baptized in Adventist. Within the inner circles, this is just a lip service. This is just lip service. In the inner circles, that they believe that in an infusion of righteousness in justification, they don't believe that we're saved solely by the merits of Christ that are external to us, that are imputed, legizomai, credited to our account, not infused or imparted, which is Rome, which is the Council of Trent. The Greek word dikaio means to accept as righteous, to declare as righteous. Not to make righteous, but to declare. It's an external act where God declares the person righteous, accepts them as righteous, because faith as the instrument to latch on to the merits of Christ. They have been broken by the law. They've been broken by the law. They believe the gospel. They're imputed, legizomai, which means credited, reckoned, the righteousness of Christ. Christ's perfect obedience to the law and his death has been imputed to us, not infused. Going back here. Page 158, the Catholic Church taught that good works that were the result of grace infused into the sinner's heart were meritorious, which meant that gave an individual a just claim to salvation. That's exactly what Lizzie was getting at. I can't find the page here now. Oh, here it is. This might be it. Yeah, I'm going to read a couple things here because they did a very good job here, but it's lip service. Watch what your own documents say, Lizzie. Page 121. The term justification, quote unquote, is a translation of the Greek word dikaiome, meaning righteous, requirement, deed, regulation, judicial sentence. But that's not the word Paul uses usually. Watch. Quote, act of righteousness, and dikaios, signifying justification, vindication, acquittal. The related verb, this is it, dikaio, meaning be pronounced and treated as righteous, being acquitted, being justified, vindicate. acquittal, accepted as righteous, declared righteous. That's from your own church's works. What else do we have here? But also within Adventism, we have the investigative judgment, which is detrimental to the gospel. I'm not going to get into that. I did a video on that before. I should update it. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but primarily the doctrine of the investigative judgment, as the Adventists know, leads to sinless perfection. That God is recording the sins. Jesus entered the holy place at his ascension and started recording the sins from Adam onward of the dead. Then he entered the most holy place in 1844, October 22nd, despite what Hebrews 4:14 says, Hebrews 6:19 and 20, Hebrews 9, the whole chapter. And so he's recording sins. And then in 1844, he started recording the sins of the living. And Adventists believe in the investigative judgment doctrine that their name can come up in these books. Christ has all these books in his lap, trying to figure out who's going to be saved in that. And their name can come up at any time, so they need to be sinlessly perfect. The investigative judgment is anti-gospel. The Adventists don't believe in the gospel. Adventists need the gospel. This is a deep burden of mine as a former Adventist, that they would accept what the Protestant Reformation stood for. What were the two main things? The formal material cause. The formal cause is sola scriptura. The Bible alone is their final authority for faith and morals. And then the material is sola fide, justification by faith alone, based upon the merits of Christ imputed to our account, which they both deny those two things. Because Ellen White, of course, is an ongoing revelation. An ongoing revelation. The revelation hasn't stopped with the Bible. It's ongoing with Ellen White. And she, of course, ends the debate within Adventism. But this is just kind of sporadic. I'm just going off the cuff of what I've seen in response to my video. And I would just pray that Adventists would wake up. Look, I'm going to talk about imputation. I have to. There has to be a right understanding here. I'm all over the place. Just my heart goes out to the dear Adventist people. Romans 4. Romans 3, sorry. Verse 21. But now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been revealed, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ, for all those who believe, for there is no distinction. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, being justified as a gift by his grace through the redemption which is in Christ Jesus, whom God displayed publicly as a propitiation in his blood through faith. This was to demonstrate his righteousness, because in the forbearance of God he passed over the sins previously committed, for the demonstration, I say, of his righteousness at the present time, so that he would be just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus. Where is boasting? It is excluded by what kind of law? Of works? No, but by the law of faith. For we maintain that a man is justified by faith apart from the works of the law. Now, very briefly. Verse 22, even the righteousness of God through faith. Faith is the instrument. There's no meritorious value in faith. Faith is a gift. Philippians 1, Ephesians 2, 1 Thessalonians 1, 4 and 5, 2 Peter 1, 1 to 3. Faith is a gift of God that is worked in our heart by the preaching of the gospel. The righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe, for there is no distinction. He's speaking of the Jew and Gentile there, of course. Romans 1:18 to right up here to 3:21, he's dealing with the Jew Gentile. There was a Jew and Gentile problem in the church at Rome since who was it? Claudius in 49 expelled all the Jews from Rome, so it was a predominantly Gentile church. Then in 54 AD, Nero let them back, and so Paul's dealing with these issues. And the Jew is justified in the same way as the Gentile. There's no difference. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That brings us back to verse 9 right through to 18. That none seek after God. None seek after him. God has to do that work on your heart. Being justified as a gift. Verse 24. Being justified, that is, being declared righteous, dikaio, as the Seventh-day Adventist 27 fundamental doctrines say, being accepted as righteous, declared righteous, not made righteous, declared righteous as a gift. It's given to you as a gift by his grace, his unmerited favor, through the redemption which is in Christ Jesus, whom God displayed publicly as a propitiation. Propitiation means Christ in his atonement satisfied God's wrath in our place, in the place of mankind, for us fallen short of breaking his law. Propitiation in his blood through faith. This was to demonstrate his righteousness, God's righteousness, that he can't overlook sin. He had to deal with it in Christ, so he poured his wrath upon Christ. Because in the forbearance of God, that is God's self-restraint of his wrath against mankind until he would pour it out upon Christ. That's penal substitution, which is Reformation teaching. To demonstrate his righteousness, because in the forbearance of God, he passed over the sins previously committed. For the demonstration, I say, of his righteousness at the present time, so that he would be just. God is just. He's not overlooking sin. He's dealing with it in Christ. That he would be just, and the justifier. God does the justifying, not us. We have no part in it. Of the one who has faith in Jesus. Where then is boasting? There's no boasting. There's no boasting. Romans 8, therefore, there is now no condemnation